Hello everyone, my name is Bernie Martin and I am one of the top shelf model analysts, and today we'll be discussing closing cost. I am using the hotel acquisition template in order to demonstrate the effect of closing costs on a model and how it is entered within a financial model. So to get started, closing costs are the costs associated with the sale of a real estate property. So both the buyer and seller are responsible for paying closing costs. So it's always important to remember to factor in closing costs into your budget when you're looking to purchase a property, since they can be a large expense. So some common items that are included in closing costs are loan origination fees, appraisal fees, title search fees, title insurance, transfer taxes, property taxes, real estate commissions, and the list kind of goes on and on. So I'll take some time to break down what some of these items are for you, as well as how they affect the model. So let's go into the model here. So I'm on the Assumptions tab, and if I go down to Acquisition Assumptions box here, you'll see that there's a line item for closing costs. So you can enter a percentage here, and then it kind of gives you the closing cost number here. So typically, closing costs are around 2 to 5% of the purchase price for a buyer. So this can be seen that this 3% here is entered, and this takes 3% of the purchase price, and that gives you a result of $360,000 in closing costs. So if you knew what the closing costs were, you could just go ahead and overwrite this here, or put them instead down here and just zero this out, and you can this sums all the acquisition cost together here for you. Or if you didn't know and you kind of be safe and put in an estimate here, what you think what they are, and it will calculate the closing costs for you based on the purchase price and the percentage you entered. So closing costs are typically financed with the property. So this cost, if there is a loan for the property, these costs can be covered by the loan. So now let's get back to some of the costs that we were talking about before that fall under closing costs. So one of them to always keep in mind is origination fees for a loan. So typically when you close a property, you kind of know that you'll need a loan to cover it, so that loan will already be in place. And origination fee is essentially the cost associated with taking out a loan and is paid up front. And this fee is typically 1% of the loan amount. So always keep in mind that for origination fees, you should double check to make sure you're not including that cost here, as well as in the acquisition debt assumptions. So I usually kind of keep my origination fees separate and model out the origination fee over here with the loan. So I entered 1% over here, and this takes the 1% of the max loan amount, and my origination fee is entered under debt assumptions, so I would not include it in this closing costs amount here. Another cost that I would look at for closing costs would be appraisal fees. So appraisal fee is the fee paid to the appraiser to value the property you're buying, and this is important since it helps determine how much the lender is willing to lend to the property. And another one would be title search fees and title insurance. So title search fees are fees that are charged by a title company to verify that there are no ownership discrepancies on the property through searching public property records and deed records. And this kind of goes with also getting title insurance. So this fee can protect both the lender and the buyer of the property, and a lender will pay this one-time fee to protect themselves if there is an ownership dispute that wasn't originally recognized under the title search, as well as a buyer will also pay for title insurance to protect themselves in this instance. Other costs associated as Other costs that are included in closing costs would be survey fees. A survey fee is a fee paid to a surveyor in order to verify the property's legal boundaries and if the land purchase might have a potential problem to it. And other closing cost items are property taxes, and lenders typically want you to pay any property taxes due within 60 days, so making sure all these fees are paid up front. So if I go into the monthly cash flows, you'll see that this 12,410 number, and I go into the construction budget, that this all-in acquisition cost is happening in month 0. So all this is upfront fees. So always kind of keep closing costs in mind when purchasing a property, and you should know what these closing cost fees are before the transaction is complete, since it is required by law under the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, also known as RESPA, and this kind of forces lenders to provide a good faith estimate that includes an estimate of the loan and the closing costs within 30 days of applying for a home loan or 7 days before closing. So you should know what this number is when modeling out once the property is bought, but before it's bought, in order to get an estimate, I usually put around 2 to 5%, and that should give you a good estimate of what you are likely to see. So that's all I have for you today about closing costs. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks.